Hello and welcome to the Unnamed Automotive Podcast. My name is Sami Assad, and with me, as always, is my good friend and fellow automotive journalist, Benjamin Hunting. Say hi to the people, Ben.
Greetings, human listeners.
Greetings to everyone. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. We really appreciate it. And as a recap, we will reiterate that Ben and I are a pair of automotive journalists, but more important than that, we're very good friends. Isn't that right, Ben?
Friendship is a competitive advantage.
It really is. And you know what else?
If only we had any kind of rivals.
You know what else is a really good competitive advantage? Plugging your stuff all the time. And right now, I'm going to get Ben to plug a couple of the publications that he's recently written for. Now's your chance, Ben. Go for it.
I actually been doing a lot of stuff for Motor Trend lately, some fun stuff, some historical stuff. But you can also find my work at Car and Driver and at Inside Hook and at Capital One.
And you can find my work at autotrader.ca, driving.ca, and Electric Autonomy Canada. Ben, we've got some cars to talk about, mostly electrified cars.
Also,
and I'm really eager to... Yes?
Sami, welcome back from vacation.
Thank you. It was more of a experiment than it was a vacation, but I'm here. We're doing it.
I heard you got a weird disease. Do you want to talk about that?
No, I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
That's the worst thing to do right now. It's too personal.
It's not that personal. I
mean,
it's
awful.
All right.
But I'm feeling okay. I'm feeling okay. I think I'm up for it. But if I sound crazy, there's like justification that I won't give you, but there is some. Okay.
Tropical fever, folks.
Yeah,
Tropical fever.
I got cabin fever. Ben, you've driven a car that I've been really excited to hear your thoughts on. I mean, I also want to drive it and share my thoughts on it, but I really want to hear what you have to say about it because you are one of the harshest critics of electric vehicles that I've ever known.
What?
And you hate all electric cars, and you think that if we just had hydrogen cars, all of our problems will be solved, including and not exclusive to global warming.
I don't understand why you think I suddenly work for Toyota.
I'm just kidding, of course.
No one hates EVs more than Toyota.
I think there's somebody who hates EVs more than Toyota.
Who is that?
I think Honda does.
No, Honda actually has an EV that they don't build.
Yeah. Sounds like Toyota.
I drove the I guess I'm gonna go with the car that I drove now that was sort of an intro to what I was driving.
Why don't you just give them the year first? Most people like to hear the year.
2024.
Wow, what a surprise.
Do you want the month?
No, it's okay. Hit with the automaker now.
Kia.
Ooh. And then?
Two little letters.
What are they?
E.
Yes.
V.
Oh yeah, okay, great. I think I know where this is going.
And they already have one called 6, but if you turn that 6 upside down, you get the EV9.
Yeah.
And
okay.
I drove the GT line package.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah. So this is a really cool looking vehicle. This is a
3-row EV.
Yeah, there aren't very many of these. Can you think of another 3-row EV?
Is the Hummer 3 rows?
Yes. Can you think of another
one? But it's also
one?
like 6 digits?
Yeah, well, it's also like enormous. Can you think of another one?
Is the Rivian 3 rows?
Yes, the R1S, I believe.
Okay.
And the Model X is also 3-row.
Oh, yes. How do I always forget about that?
Because
I also think the Y has a 3rd-row option, an awful 3rd-row option.
It might. I mean, I don't know.
Okay, great.
But the whole reason I bring that up is because there's not many of them, right? It's the 3-row SUV has kind of been the final frontier for electric cars. We've had electric sports cars, electric pickup trucks, and a lot of vehicles in between that. But when it comes to SUVs, we pretty much just had 2-row, somewhat crossover-like versions of these vehicles.
Yeah, really like low-slung crossovers, basically like wagons or hatchbacks.
Basically wagons, like BZ4X and like Honda Prologue, which we were just talking about. Mach-E, which rides a little bit taller, but yeah, it's...
Ioniq 5.
I thought you said Bionic 5 for a second.
Bionic 5 as well.
That's a missed opportunity for branding that no one has taken.
Infiniti would have gotten it, I think. Bionic Cheetah 5.
Instead, they have no EVs whatsoever.
There we go.
Which is strange.
Despite the mainstream side of them having 2.
Yeah, I just realized it's a little weird. It's almost like Nissan doesn't care about Infiniti and has kind of not given them new product in a really long time.
Listen,
that can't be true.
Ever since Mitsubishi joined the alliance, there's been all kinds of weird weird things going on over there, and Nissan just has to manage its resources.
Do you think Mitsubishi's going to get its own like in-house premium brand? And if so, what would it be called?
What's the opposite of Infinity? What's a synonym for Infinity? Forever?
Yeah, forever.
There
but it would be like 4 dash. What do they call their all-wheel control?
E4 horse?
E4, yeah, it would be E4 horse ever. Yeah, so getting back to the EV9, it's cool because it looks like a big soul.
It looks cool, yeah. You're right, that's a great way to put it. It looks like a embiggened, I guess.
Embiggened soul. And it's nice because it proves that you can make a large EV that doesn't have to look like a bar of soap, which is, something Mercedes-Benz should pay attention to.
A used bar of soap at that.
Yeah, this is a vehicle that has a passing acquaintance with a wind tunnel. But in order for it to deliver its range, instead of making it as sleek as possible, Kia has simply given it a really big battery.
Okay, so there's always this really neat way of approaching electric vehicle range. You either go with massive battery, you go with aerodynamics, or you go with weak motors.
Yeah, so the EV9 actually does 2 of those 3 things.
Okay.
The base model gets a 76.1 kilowatt hour battery, which is still pretty big.
That's huge, yeah.
But it is rear-wheel drive only, and it comes with a single motor.
And I say that's huge because a lot of the other like mainstream 2-row EVs have like a 60 or 80 kilowatt hour battery as their optional upgrade, right?
Yeah, well, this weighs like almost 6,000 pounds. So
holy moly!
When we talk about size, weight, and engine, not engine, but motor power, that's something we're really going to have to pay attention to. So that base model EV9, has 230 miles of range, but it only has, I believe, 201 horsepower. So I want you to think about a 201 horsepower motor moving 6,000 pounds. It's like 5,800 pounds of SUV.
So it's all about torque to move get those vehicles moving, but getting them to make a pass will be the real problem, right?
I don't have a torque rating on the base motor. I think it's okay.
It's usually like 11,000 or something.
Yeah, it's nonsensical. And that's not even its final form. If you can step up to a larger battery, it's 99.8 kilowatt hours. With that same single motor setup, you get 304 miles of driving. They call it the light long range trim.
Excuse me?
Yeah, the base model.
What does that mean? Light, long range.
The base model is called light, and then the long range is called.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, 5,000 pounds. And then it's light, long range, and then the version that I had. So if you want a dual motor setup, there's like 2 other trim levels that come with that. There's one called the wind trim.
Oh yeah,
okay. Then there's the land trim, and both of those have 379 horsepower and 443 pound-feet of torque. I had the GT line, which is the top model. It is the same in terms of horsepower, but it has 516 pound-feet of torque. That's a boost option that comes with the vehicle. You can get that on any other dual motor version of the EV9. So that's kind of how it shakes out in terms of power and torque and battery. The GT line, since it has a heavier battery and the additional motor, the range is 270 miles. So it's the most powerful model, but it doesn't have the best range. It's actually like 34 or 44 miles. Sorry, 34 miles below the best one. I saw 260 miles per charge, so it was pretty damn close.
Okay, that's pretty impressive.
But Sammy, the Tesla Model X gives you like 335 miles of range. So, and crazy power. So it's like, it's not really
a step behind.
Yeah, it's not a range champion.
And so it's showed up on the scene and done something that the competition is already doing, if not better. And they're just happy to be there saying we can do it too.
I don't know if they're just happy to, something. I don't think they're just happy to be there, but I think that what we see with the EV9 are the limits of the EGMP platform.
Okay, so this is an important thing to discuss because the EGMP platform is the electric vehicle platform that's shared not just with Kia and Hyundai, but also Genesis as well. So all of these automakers or brands have electric vehicles that are really well, I think, regarded critically.
Yeah, they're great. I love the Ioniq 5. I love the EV6. These are great vehicles. The Genesis for GV60 is pretty good too. Mm-hmm. What I think, though, is when they took the same platform and tried to make it as big as a 3-row crossover, they ran into some issues. And one of those issues we just talked about, range is not fantastic. So not going to the wind tunnel has, I think, hurt it a little bit. It's not nearly as aerodynamic as the smaller versions of the car. The extra weight hurts it. Performance is still pretty good. I think it's like 4 something seconds to 60 if you have the GT line, which is crazy. But that's not something you really care about in a vehicle this size. This is a vehicle you buy because you need to have the extra row, or you need to have the extra hauling capacity.
Okay.
So the good part of the EGMP, it still has the fast charging. It does 10% to 80% in 24 minutes if you have a good DC fast charge connection.
Yeah, which is kind of rare sometimes, but it can happen.
Yeah, and another reason I think why the range might be low is 21-inch wheels on the GT line, which is not that great either. Those are heavy, and they're going to play a role in killing the range. But what I really disliked about this car was how terrible it rides. And this it really pains me to say this because I really like EGMP, and I think everything up to this point from Kia and Hyundai on this platform has been great dynamically. Okay. This is the worst riding SUV I have driven in maybe 5 or 6 years, maybe more than that.
Okay, what do you mean by this? Let's talk about what conditions is it a poor riding vehicle, because sometimes I hear that complaint from journalists who are like, okay, it's just not sporty. It's a bit floaty, and not every car needs to be super stiff and sporty and responsive.
If it was that, then I would not be complaining as much as I am. The problem with the EV9 is every time I hit a bump while driving at speeds of, say, 50 miles an hour or more, it rocked all over the place, like diagonal, front and back, knocking your head around. I thought there was a broken spring on the vehicle.
Okay.
It is that bad. I'm talking potholes, expansion joints on bridges, railroad crossings, any kind of uneven pavement. This thing is all over the place. It is shocking how bad the body control is. As I mentioned, I thought something was broken until I went online and started reading owner forums, and every single person with the GT line was complaining about the same thing. This is a known issue with this vehicle, and it is frankly shocking to me that this is on the market with the suspension tune that it has.
That's wild. So what, it needs like extra sway bars or something to keep this thing just reacting
I really don't know.
It's so the strange. Conditions ahead of it? That's insane.
It's so strange because the battery is as low as it could possibly be in the body, and that's where all the weight is. Something about stretching out this platform, changing the wheelbase, whatever it is, I don't understand why this wasn't tuned differently. I'd say it's inexcusable. I could not recommend this vehicle. And it's too bad because I really like how it looks. I think it's nice inside. I think that Kia has really cracked the EV code in terms of what people want from an electric vehicle. And this is unquestionably useful. I hauled a bunch of stuff around in it. It has a lot of room. The rear seat is fine for short trips if you're an adult. The second row is pretty spacious. And I love the look of it. It doesn't look as big as it actually is, which is something that I think is impressive to achieve with styling.
Especially with it as boxy as it is, right?
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't come across as overwhelming or massive. And it's almost like a TARDIS, where like you get in and you're surprised by how much larger it is inside. But the suspension tuning is a non-starter for me. You cannot... It's even worse than like a live axle body on frame full-size SUV.
Then that's a damning sort of criticism for sure.
It's crazy because the Ioniq 5 and the EV6 are nothing like that. It is dramatically different.
It's important you bring up the two other EGMP vehicles because I think common sense makes us believe that a Hyundai and a Genesis version of this vehicle is coming.
Maybe not a Genesis, but probably a Hyundai for sure. I think I've already seen pictures of it, actually.
I'm almost certain a Genesis has to be coming. But to me, they can't sell it in this case if there's this criticism going on. Now, are other people? I mean, you said owners are sharing this thought. I didn't read other reviews of this vehicle yet.
I haven't read other reviews that have talked about it.
Okay.
I've read a couple that mentioned poor body control, but not to the extreme that I had. I don't know if they were just on smoother roads than I was, but it was shocking. And like every once in a while, I would think, okay, maybe I'm I'm overanalyzing this. Maybe I'm overreacting. And then I would be on like a bridge on the highway and it'd go dunk, and like my whole body would rock forwards and backwards, and the front of the vehicle would come up, and I'm just like, what is going on? Like, there's nothing else on the market right now that offers this similar experience.
Did it feel out of control whenever it was doing this wobble, this crab walk on you?
Not necessarily. I didn't feel like it was going to crash or anything like that, but it is extremely uncomfortable. And
it stays in the lane still? Does the steering wheel move? Do you feel it?
It's it's the body movement. And this is a $75,000 vehicle.
Yeah.
And it does not qualify for the $7,500 federal tax credit because Kia has not yet started building these in the United States. They're going to next year. The battery pack, has to be built in the US in order to qualify. So you're paying full freight for that. In Canada, the model I drove starts at $64,000 or $65,000, I guess. It's just below that. And it had $14,000 in options. So it came out to $81,000. This is an expensive vehicle. And at that price point, I mean, you're close to vehicles like you're close to the Tesla Model X.
Yeah, definitely.
And the Rivian. I think you're actually right in the ballpark of the Rivian. And we have the Volvo EX90 that's on the way. We have the Escalade IQ. So these other three rows are coming. I really wanted this to be better.
Now, do you know if there are lower trim level versions of the EV9? That is it a unique suspension system to the GT line? Do you think the other models might have different suspension settings?
I do not have that answer.
Okay. Or do you think that maybe a more active suspension system would do the trick in terms of saving? I think
any kind of suspension system would be better. This is not an unsolved problem.
I gotta say, coming from a guy who has this, not that I don't think it's an 80s Grand Wagoneer, right? That you own in your garage. And I don't know if the ride quality on that thing is fantastic. But,
it's excellent. It's actually one of the most comfortable cars you could ever drive.
But does it settle after hitting a pothole?
It has solid front axle and a solid rear axle. It's not at all a comparable experience.
But does it feel like that? Does the EV9 feel like that?
No, it's different. It's a body control issue. It's not yeah.
Interesting. I just wanted to bring up your experience on some other vehicles that have compromises. I think
there is not a single other vehicle on the market that does this.
That's wild. I am very sensitive to that because I think we drive on our highways. We have those expansion joints when a highway, like an on ramp or an off ramp, and sometimes you hit those at any reasonable speed, and the car can just do this really awful shimmy. And I feel really sensitive to when a car starts doing those like lateral or like diagonal wobbles that make you think, is it leaving its lane right now? Do I have control over this vehicle still? Obviously, everything still works out. I'm still here, and we're still talking about cars. But
except for that jungle tropical fever that you picked up.
Yes, that's right. But I would imagine I'm very eager to see what this is like and taking it on my test drives because, yeah, you're right. You have shared these concerns from owners with me. And that's a problem, man. Like there needs to be something done here, either electronically or mechanically.
I don't think it's an electronic thing. I think it's a chassis thing. I think there's just something wrong with this formula.
So that's it.
That's it.
We've said this before. I've said this with certain vehicles in the past that some cars are in need of a mid-cycle refresh in order for them to get to get finished. This sounds like that, right?
But what's weird to me is like someone drove this and said it was okay. That's the wildest. I've been to Namyang in Korea where they do the testing, and I've driven on their testing courses. It's not like
and it's thorough.
Yeah, it is. And this somehow got the stamp of approval, and that's wild to me.
What else? You mentioned another thing when you were talking to me about hands-free driving intervention with this vehicle. Do you remember this? Do you remember this conversation you had with me?
I think you're thinking about the Hyundai Sonata.
Oh, my mistake. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
That's for another week.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought they're all the same sometimes.
That's okay. That's kind of racist, but
that's not what I mean. What else do you want to tell me about this car? Is the interior is it slick? Is it cool? Does it feel like an EV on the interior?
It's fine. It's good. Like I said, I would love to be able to recommend this because it does a lot of positive things. But it just falls down in too many areas.
It just rides no, it doesn't. I don't know too many areas. It falls down in the most critical one, right? If this car was sitting still, it'd be great. Right?
Range is also a problem, and I think
it's unusable.
I said it's a problem. If
That's a red flag.
Yeah, you're spending $75,000 and you get 260 miles per charge.
But you get wicked charging speeds.
Sure, that's helpful, but I think that when you're comparing it to its peers, it falls behind.
There
And
is a model here that gets 300 miles of range. That's okay.
we talked about that. It
I
has
know.
200 horsepower.
Oh, right.
That is not okay.
I forgot
And
about
it's
that.
it's not the, it's the lowest trim level or the second lowest trim level.
Well, maybe it has decent tires and can take a hit on the road.
I don't think it's
not
tires.
not in terms of safe crash test safety. Sorry,
I just think that, it's a compromised vehicle.
that's fair. I think that's a really appropriate assessment of this vehicle, and I truly think that it needs some help. It needs some refreshing here.
All right, so speaking of vehicles that need refreshing,
Oh,
what did you drive this week?
I drove a vehicle that you had some of the harshest words I remember for a new vehicle that we were all excited about. I drove the 2024 Mazda CX-90 Plug-in Hybrid. And I recall that when you had it, first of all, there were some mechanical issues that I think
Yeah, the hybrid system failed.
Yeah.
The high output battery system failed on me.
And I had some other colleagues discuss some issues with the vehicle's infotainment system. Now, I think all of these problems, came about when the car first hit the market. And now it's been on the market for a little, maybe let's say half a year or maybe a year.
Yeah, I think I drove it in like August.
And I'm driving it now, well past everyone else. But I drove it to compare to the Toyota Grand Highlander Hybrid Max. As you know, I've been doing a whole lot of these 3-row crossover comparisons, and I thought it was really cool to take a look at two different flavors of hybrid vehicle. The Toyota Grand Highlander comes in two hybrid forms. There's the standard hybrid, and there's also the Hybrid Max, which compares a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine with the hybrid powertrain, and delivers like 360 horsepower. The Mazda has two hybrid-ish powertrains. There's a 48-volt mild hybrid system that's paired with a 6-cylinder turbo, and then there's a plug-in hybrid that's paired with a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine, and that's what I've got now. Combined horsepower of this vehicle is around 223 horsepower, and it feels pretty good. It has an 8-speed auto that at certain times I thought was a bit clumsy feeling, and then after a while I realized that maybe I've been driving this car a little bit wrong. I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but I think that I figured this car out, and I don't think it's for efficiency. I don't think it's for family vehicle usage. It is some sort of weird enthusiast-oriented, and I say that really, really, really like loosely, 3-row SUV. Let me discuss here. First of all, you got 26 kilometers of all-electric range on this 17.8 kilowatt-hour battery. It's not a lot. I don't really like that range at all.
That's like, what, 14 miles?
No, sorry. That's 26 miles.
Okay,
it's about 40
kilometers.
40 kilometers, 42 kilometers of range. So I think that's 26 miles. This is a difficult battery to manage. I wanted to save the battery for when I hit the town and hit the city conditions or traffic conditions, and can use that electricity efficiently. Okay.
I mean, you can also use it while you're driving, and it gives you pretty decent fuel mileage.
It's okay. Yeah, it is definitely better when it has a full battery, or at least a battery with some charge in it. The moment that battery is depleted, this car tanks in terms of performance, in terms of fuel efficiency, and a little bit in terms of just overall feel.
And I also had the problem when I talked about this vehicle, even before I had the failure of the hybrid system, which is, one thing. I had trouble with the electric motor where it wouldn't go up hills. I was trying to drive in EV mode, and I would get to certain slopes and it would just die going up the hill. It would slow down. And I kept pushing the pedal down to try and get up the hill, and it wouldn't fix anything. And then eventually it fired the motor back up, but it took a long time for that to happen.
It took too long. I haven't had that happen yet, but I want to tell you that one of the biggest complaints I had, like I said, I couldn't manage this powertrain. I couldn't say that I wanted to save the electric battery for another time. And I found it difficult to, some vehicles have this really inefficient charge the battery from the gas motor functionality. I finally found out that there's some really arbitrary cheat code or application of driving settings that kind of give me what I'm looking for. When you put the vehicle in its sport mode, that suddenly when it doesn't use it charges the electric vehicle, the electric battery, not very fast or anything like that.
That doesn't make any sense. Wouldn't you want full power when you're in sport mode?
I know, it's so weird.
It's very strange.
And suddenly I feel like I'm not consuming all of the battery range when I'm driving in sport mode. So I finally found out that maybe this is the intended purpose of this, or the intended driving manner of this vehicle.
Don't pretend that you know the mind of Mazda.
I don't. What is it they call Jinbai Itai, or that they want to say one horse, one rider? Is that their thing?
I don't know. I'm not the one with tropical fever, so
okay.
I'm the wrong person to ask about horses.
Overall, though, I will say, even when I was piloting this vehicle in the sport mode, I will say that it is fairly fun to drive as a 3-row crossover can be. The steering is really nice. The ride quality is very smooth. I think the noise levels in the cabin could be improved a little bit, or maybe they're doing it on purpose. You do hear that that first-cylinder engine punch up every once in a while, and I don't love that noise that much.
I don't really like the handling in that vehicle. I found it very, very blah. Like, not bad, but not engaging. Not in the same way, and we talked about this a year ago, but not in the same way not a year ago, 8 months, I guess. Remember the CX-9 was like actually fun.
Yes.
It was pretty good. And this is not that. And I think that's the biggest difference. This
is a little bit more of it feels like in terms of ride quality, milder than the CX-9. And I think that means something a little bit different. The CX-9 could have been described as stiff. I think that's fair.
But this is also a vehicle,
is not stiff.
Like, even if you get the gas-only model, it doesn't out-accelerate any of its competitors, and it doesn't out-handle them, and yet it's marketed as something sporty because it has a Mazda badge, and it's so strange to me. Like, they made this whole new platform and this whole new drivetrain, and it doesn't outcompete anybody. And why? You know, like, we know that Mazda can do that. They can bring the goods, and they just didn't.
One of my biggest complaints about it exactly is that there are some very good players in the 3-row vehicle class, with hybrids and without. So we've been talking about the Grand Highlander a few times over the past few months. That hybrid max powertrain, it hauls. This doesn't quite feel as punchy as that model does. It doesn't really feel that efficient at times. The interior is nice, but nothing beyond other vehicles in this class, right? Like, I think Mazda keeps trying to tell people that they're more higher end or more premium automaker, but they don't. They just don't pull it off.
Yeah, they don't pull it off. That's a great way of putting it.
And
there's nothing wrong with what they've built.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it, but just stop trying to say you're better than everyone else.
It's not great, like, it's fine. And I don't know if a small company can build something that's fine and survive.
I think Subaru pulls it off.
Yeah, but Subaru
they have a niche.
They have a niche that Mazda doesn't have, or that Mazda has relinquished, because I think Mazda's niche used to be affordable performance. And I think they're trying to make their niche, we're kind of a luxury company. Like, remember when Volvo did that? And Volvo pulled it off. Yeah. Volvo moved from, we're a weird company that is so into safety. And then when every other car company was like, hey, we do safety stuff now too, because it's all electronics and everything is safe now, Volvo took a look around, read the room, and realized that they needed something else. So they went in heavy into design.
Okay.
And now they're moving heavy into electrification.
Yeah.
It's a moving target for Volvo that has worked very well, because that design positioned them to be able to at least snipe at European luxury customers. Mm-hmm. And now they're one of the few brands, I would say BMW is kind of getting there with them, that is serious enough about electrification for that to be a core competency in the luxury European space.
Definitely, yeah.
And Mazda has done none of that. Mazda has kind of circled the periphery of what it wants to do without actually delivering.
Now, there's another thing I want to talk about. This is supposed to be their largest vehicle, and there's something wrong with the execution of that. It does not feel like a full size, like a large 3-row crossover. It doesn't feel as spacious as that Grand Highlander, or maybe some of the other vehicles, like, let's say, the Palisade. The 3rd row is pretty much useless for adults. I found the 2nd row kind of tight for an infant seat, which is which is wild. There's a second row cup holder design that's really flimsy. It's just this flap that kind of like folds up and down, and I can just imagine some kid's going to step on that and destroy it. Features wise, there's nothing here that makes you go, wow, they really, gave us something that we were looking for. And in terms of overall cargo space, there's just nothing that's worth mentioning. It starts at around 50,000 for the plug-in hybrid model, and then tops out at just under 60,000. So maybe there's some value to this, but and a lot of people actually told me that they thought it looked pretty sharp, but I wasn't feeling it. And there's something that's just not hitting me right with the CX-90, and I don't know what that is. I don't know what they need to do to make this win.
And it's too bad because the CX-5 is really good.
Yeah.
And the Mazda 3 is really good for in their class. These are good vehicles. They're competitive vehicles. And the 5 is getting a little long in the tooth.
Yeah.
But it delivers in the sense that it is reasonably good to drive. And the Mazda 3 is reasonably good to drive. And it's kind of like echoes of the past of Mazda. And I'm going to say, we were just talking about the EV9. It's almost like not every company should be building large 3-row crossovers because they don't have anything to do with their identity. And in fact, it dilutes the brand.
Yeah, that's a slippery slope. Like, that's a really difficult argument to make. They want to compete in every place.
Sure, but I mean,
what
Kia
is it
already
here?
has
Yeah.
the Telluride, right? So like they are competing there. Does Mazda really need a 3-row crossover?
Well, even funnier now is not only that, but the CX-70, which is essentially the CX-90 without the third row, is also
exactly
coming.
that is all it is. There's no difference.
And
from what I
they've
understand.
this is, maybe without the concept, that thought in our mind that this needs to be a 3-row vehicle, and I wouldn't have to have that complaint about a useless third row.
I don't
suddenly
think so. It's not going to
makes the
change.
CX-70 better. I don't know.
It won't change the dynamics of the vehicle, which are still going to be milquetoast.
Yeah, mainly because it's a 5,000 pound car. Like, it's heavy, and
At that point, you're building 5,000, 6,000 pound cars. What's your identity?
What are you doing?
Are you just photocopying a market demographic that you need to serve? And if that's the case and you can sell them, then fine. But it's going to be really hard to maintain a brand identity in that space if that's what you're doing.
I don't know. That does sound a little harsh. I don't know how to react to that just yet. I really hope that some of our listeners listen to you say that and give us some feedback, because I agree with you. I think and I agreed with this concept back when Mercedes was selling CLAs and Audi was selling A3s and BMW was selling those 2 Series that were kind of like
a little janky.
Yeah. You don't need to dilute the brand with something just to get your name in a new market, right?
Just a couple weeks ago, we were talking about the X2 and how the X2 just kind of doesn't feel like a BMW.
Well, the problem with the X2 is that the old one was actually kind of cool, was kind of interesting. And now the new one just lost a lot of its BMW identity and just made it. I honestly found it kind of competent. I know you were a little bit more harsher on it than I was, but I found it to be, totally functional, if strangely body styled vehicle, right?
But do you want if you're buying a BMW, do you want it to be a totally functional vehicle? Like, is that the bar? I don't know.
I don't. Obviously, I don't. But I know a lot of people who just want that feeling that they've earned the right to a luxury automaker, and that's it.
And now we're talking marketing. Now
we're talking about marketing,
right?
yes.
Which is fine, because that's all anything is.
And that's all of these cars are.
All we are in this industry are cogs in a massive marketing machine. That is, why we have access. That is how it works. So I get it.
But this is not doing them any favors to let us drive a CX-90 and say, duh, it's not that great, right? Like,
well, you don't have to include the duh part.
Well, no, that's what I say. Like, there's nothing here that is making it stand. The only thing that makes me feel like they've got something going here is that it's one of the few plug-in hybrid 3-row crossovers. And if you're doing a daily school run or something like that, where you can stay within the battery range, you might never visit a gas station for like a month at a time. And I think
as long as there's no hills in the way. Like,
yeah, or you get the range back on the way down.
And as long as your hybrid battery doesn't fail.
Oh my gosh. So it's just an interesting take there are different offerings in this class. I still believe that the best family-friendly vehicle, body style-wise, is a minivan. Okay,
excellent. Get
and
it, man.
And there are two hybrid options in the minivan space. There's a plug-in hybrid from Chrysler,
which is excellent. Although I can't speak to overall quality long term.
And then there's a all-wheel drive. I think it's all-wheel drive. You might have to get me off on that. Toyota Sienna hybrid, which is raspy, less spacious,
tiny inside, and expensive,
but totally practical and still functional.
Yeah, but a lot less practical than every other minivan.
Okay. Then
I mean, like, seriously, like 40% smaller inside. We're not kidding here.
Then there are really good three-row crossovers. We've mentioned the gas cars like the Palisade and the Telluride, and we mentioned the hybrid options like the Grand Highlander, which has really grown on me. I need to talk to you. A year ago, I first drove this vehicle in Hawaii, and I was really, I think I was caught. No, but I think I was caught by that. Like, if they needed to send you to Hawaii to drive something, maybe it's not as good as they think it is.
The only time I've been to Hawaii was to drive the Lexus LC, and that was as good as I thought.
Okay, so I was, and not only that, I drove all three powertrains of the Grand Highlander, and you have to sift through a lot of feelings when talking about an overall product line that has three totally different powertrains, right?
Yeah, but the thing about the Grand Highlander is it's an appliance.
Yes.
It's intended to be an appliance. Toyota doesn't go out there and say, this is an exciting vehicle to drive. Toyota says, this is a bigger Highlander. You can put more people or more stuff in it. And we've given it a really powerful hybrid engine if you want. And
that's not very efficient. I think I need to reiterate that.
Well, they have another hybrid if you want the more efficient one, right? Which is kind of efficient. So, yeah. But again, you can't really fight mass. You can work to fight it. But at a certain point, as we saw with the EV9, it is going to catch up with you.
Right. So what I'm trying to say is, I was trying to say that there are really good hybrid targets that Mazda should be aiming for. And I don't know, maybe they were caught off guard by the Highlander and the Grand Highlander. Maybe they were aiming for the Highlander, and then the Grand Highlander happened, and then they're like, uh-oh.
I don't know. It kind of feels like this vehicle was developed in a vacuum. It's like, it's hard to line it up against a direct competitor because it's hard to think of another non-luxury vehicle that has like a turbocharged straight six engine and a rear wheel drive oriented platform.
I guess the Grand Cherokees?
Yeah, but the Grand Cherokee L, right?
Yeah.
Which is not a sporty vehicle.
Yeah.
And it's odd.
And it actually delivers on a bit of its luxury pretense.
Which, the Mazda or the
Jeep?
The
Jeep.
Yeah, but like it's again, the Jeep is marketed more as this is something high end that you can go off road with. It's not like this is something high end that is fun to drive. A Jeep, the Grand Cherokee never really, the Grand Cherokee L for sure does not make that claim.
No. So that's my overall feelings, which is a lot of words for me to say that I don't love this car. I wanted to try. I had an open mind despite Ben's issues with it. And I had fewer issues with it, but the overall experience was still extremely average, and makes me worry about what kind of product planning is in place at Mazda and how they're going to overcome this approach to building vehicles, especially crossovers, which is where everyone wants to be, right?
Sure, apparently.
Which is important to say because we just heard recently that two mainstream sedans are dead after this year. That's the Subaru Legacy and the Chevy Malibu. Now, these aren't very popular cars, right?
Most of you are probably surprised the Malibu was still available.
I know.
It's like one of those vehicles that you think is only being built for fleet and like rental companies. And it wasn't. You could actually go buy, I think it was like a single trim level, not single trim, single drivetrain hybrid, but you could get multiple trim levels. Mm-hmm. And I have no animosity towards the Malibu. You know, I'm not going to trash talk.
It makes you seem like you have something to say about the Legacy, though. The
Legacy is a vehicle that we've talked about in the past.
Yeah.
I don't really understand why it still exists.
It exists because it rides on the Outback's coattails.
Exactly. They're able to make a relatively inexpensively a sedan version of the Outback, whereas it used to be the other way around. Mm-hmm. And they sell almost no vehicles. The Legacy the volume is non-existent. So I understand why that's going away.
But you said the very first thing when I pointed that out to you was that you said, I wonder what this does to the Outback. Because for years, the Outback has been tied to the Legacy. And now I'm going to tell you right now, the Outback's going to get big. It's going to be big.
No, I think they're just going to build more Outbacks. I think they just
That's
want
it?
this production line space. That's what it's all about.
I think there's a new generation coming, and it's going to be huge.
Why would it be huge? They already have Ascent.
It's going to be, they're going to make the Ascent even bigger. That's what's going to happen.
I don't think that's...
Yeah, I think that's going to happen for sure.
Like Subaru doesn't already have fuel mileage problems. They're going to make two of their vehicles bigger.
Yeah.
They're going to like cut the power in the Impreza in half to try and meet corporate average fuel economy.
Is there any more left to cut in that?
No, you can't. You can't. It's too far. It's like in Super Troopers where they're pulled over and they can't pull over anymore. They're pulled over as far as they can. That's where you're at with the Impreza. You can give it a second CVT, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Two CVTs. Anyways, that's a lot of discussion on some cars we've already talked about. Is there anything else you want to talk about this week about the industry? How you feeling about what's going on these days?
I just hope your tropical fever gets better.
I also hope I get better soon, because I got places to go. I've got things to do. I can't let no sickness.
Can't be spreading the disease.
Yeah, I got to take care of a child.
For anyone who's worried, don't worry. The child is in good health.
So far.
Wow, why do you have to frame it like that?
I don't want anyone worried.
You don't want anyone worried.
I don't want anyone just going to sleep not worrying about my baby either.
Wow. Speechless.
If
you want to ask Sami,
actually, I've just got a report from his mom. He has a diaper rash.
Well,
we are essentially the worst parents on the planet.
I don't think so. But if you are out there and you would like to chastise Sami for his parenting skills or ask him personal questions about his tropical fever, you can do that in a bunch of ways. The easiest way would be to find him on X or Twitter or whatever it's called now. He is at Sami _ like you're laughing. At Sami _ ha like you're laughing.
Yeah.
You can find me on Instagram at Hunting Benjamin or email me the old fashioned way, benjamin@benjaminhunting.com. I will filter through any kind of Sami related questions if you're more comfortable. If you don't want him to trace them back to you.
Additionally,
Well, you can contact us on the website, unnamedautomotivepodcast.com. There's a contact form there. Fill it out, click submit, and boom, we get it in the inbox.
You started using the boom term now for. Do you think our inboxes are just clanging every time a message flies in?
No,
it's making
like
this boom noise.
Every time I get an email, I get the POD. Here comes the boom song plays in my house at a disconcerting volume. And I can't turn that feature off, so I'm just going with it now.
Is there anything else we want to tell people? Head on over to our website, unnamedautomotivepodcast.com. You'll see photos and links to the stories I've been writing about these cars. And you can subscribe to our podcast through there, or you can just do it through your favorite podcast client or podcatcher, as you will, if you want to use the cool vernacular that most people tend to use. I really recommend you just search for us, Unnamed Automotive Podcast. Those are 3 separate words. And you'll find us. It's easy.
And one thing I would like to ask you to do is tell your friends about us. The best way to get more people listening to a podcast is word of mouth. And if you have friends who are into cars or weird cars or just want to kind of, joke around with us, laugh around with us for an hour every week, turn them onto the podcast and, find an episode that you thought was particularly enjoyable and see if they agree with you. And that would be very helpful. If you could do that, we would appreciate it.
Ben, what do you have for me next week?
So I'm going to give you a choice. You can choose between one of 2 vehicles. The 2024 Hyundai Sonata, which has been refreshed, I guess, for this model year, or the 2024 Volkswagen Jetta GLI.
I want to talk about the Sonata because I think the Sonata has gotten a really thorough refresh, and I think the GLI has been the same since 2022.
No love for the GLI. I guess that's an episode in itself.
Okay, and on my end, I as well have 2 cars to talk about, but I'm not going to give you a choice. I'm going to take that choice away from you.
Wow.
We can only have 1 choice per episode, Ben. That's it. That's the way it works. I've got the 2024 Range Rover. Now, it's got these 2 letters after it. It's SV, which I believe means special vehicle or something like that.
It does not mean that.
What does it mean?
I guarantee you it doesn't mean that.
I hope it means a special vehicle.
It clearly means sports vehicle, Sami.
Vehicle, of
Or
course.
sports vessel.
So I can't wait to talk to you about this. It is my impression that this is not a totally family-friendly vehicle, but I'll report back, okay?
All right. And thank you for listening, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.